Welcome, one and all. It's Saturday, April 20th, and it is a great honor for me to be able to help facilitate this discussion that has been many years in the making, very powerfully tied to the prophecy of the work that Phil Lane and his community of people have been doing around the eagle, condor, quetzal, and hummingbird coming together. We also want to acknowledge we have representatives from the North. We also want to, with great honor, welcome in Jon from Alliance for Indigenous Nations, who has been doing a lot of work around Indigenous land sovereignty. We also have Marsha Willardson here, who has been doing a lot of work around individual sovereignty, but also at this point working with various tribal communities around Indigenous land sovereignty. We also want to welcome Leiven Hwang, who I believe currently is in Maui, who is a representative of Indigenous Bridges, and we'll be joined in a little bit also from Mexico, from Hector Benton, from Naciones Ancestrales, and others. So I just want to say it's, again, a great honor. We know everyone is busy. We know many of you have challenges right now because we are going through, as the Hopi say, this great purification as we emerge from one world to another world, to another paradigm. And a big part of today's focus is the essential role of our traditional and indigenous communities, traditional knowledge, and our indigenous leaders and collaborators and co-creators in those communities that are doing the amazing work to help not only keep this ancient knowledge alive, but helping us and spiritually advising us to build this bridge into this new paradigm. So with that, I would like to do a proper protocol. When we introduce somebody, if you could please share where you are, if you know what ancestral or indigenous territories you are in, or what watershed, that's very helpful. And then sharing a little bit about your work on topic. And again, at the end of this discourse, we will have a roundtable discussion. But to start with, I want to pass the feather to representatives here that I have been working with to start the protocol of this gathering, of this council today. I'd like to acknowledge Grandmother Gail Thomas and Chief Phil Lane to do a proper opening so we can begin. So with that, I pass the feather to Grandmother Gail Thomas.
Thank you so much, Michael. Galigia Coesque, Dancing Heron Dances with Death, call me Gail. In my ancestral Salagi homeland, Wayumiganita, Takiosti, Asheville, North Carolina, on our sacred mountain Arigulu, which means helping many people. And we are the people who resisted both removal on the Trail of Tears and the reservation the federal government calls Cherokee by hiding in these mountains. And these mountains continue to support appropriate resistance in the way that you are all gathering here today. So I'm happy to share this song that is part of a 15-year relationship with this mountain, holding Inipikaga ceremonies here. It is honoring the common people's pipe carriers. And I waited 4 years to honor Chief Phil in this way. And the song has stayed with me this week. So I want to share it with all of you who are carrying common people's pipe.
Oh, Yalamayalo. Thank you there, beloved sister. And I want to extend a very, very warm and loving handshake and embrace to each and every one of you here. I have the honor of sitting here on unshredded, unceded land of the Simiamu First Nation, as is 94% of all British Columbia, unshredded, unceded. And I am a member of the Ihanktawa and Chickasaw Nations, enrolled member of both those nations. Also, I'm a hereditary chief of the Hihawashasha Deloria Teospies of the White Swan Dakotas from the Hihanktawa territories there in South Dakota. And I wanted to say that I'm very thankful that we're coming together, whether we're a small group, large group, because now is the prophesied time of unity. I'm really pleased to see this dear brother here, Jon Cippola, who I've been hearing about, and also been looking at all your materials and so forth. And I thank you for all the good work you're doing in bringing what this is about in a way is that the time has come to move from these collapsing colonial systems based in materialism and greed and genocide and move over to our spiritually founded sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting, that we have never surrendered because it's inherent, because that's the way we're born. Sovereignty is ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. I want to share that this prophecy of the reunion of the condor and eagle that was fulfilled March 21st, 1971 through 1972, when it was completed at Lake Titicaca on the Island of the Sun, Island of the Moon, and the whole royal court of the Incas, which is right there in kind of on the Bolivian side at Copacabana. And it was there that the understanding of that whole process of the different stages of the fulfillment of that sacred prophecy, which I know that we've all become aware of. But I think it's so important to know that all these prophecies, and there's many we're still learning about, back, and I can tell you this, looking back to 1967, when I kind of had my spiritual wake-up call after, being a pretty wild guy. These prophecies at that time, Ihaka Sapa's prophecy, Black Elk's prophecy, the prophecy of Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, Mako Kapak, White Buffalo Cattleman, Peacemaker, Hopi, so forth and so on, were just known in those local spaces. I remember I was in Bolivia, when I was in Bolivia in 1971 and 72, when first Thomas Miaka, Dakshi Thomas Miaka, came to meet with my father, as well as others that I look back to that are such beloved relatives who really, through their contributions, their sacrifice, their love, their kindness, have established the foundation upon which we're standing right now. So in honor of them, I want to sing what we call the chief song of our White Buffalo Cattleman. And I think it tells it all. Because as you know, she came about 950 AD, and all her sacred scriptures or teachings are in her sacred songs. And these sacred songs are alive and living. And that's what has given us the capacity to survive to today this place where we're now emerging from all this unity, etc. So I want to sing this song. I think it's so important what it says or what we're doing here. It says this: Hola le chali chua. It says, friend, do it this way. Whatever you do you do that 4 times. Whatever you do in life, you do with all your heart and soul. If you get knocked down, get up. You get knocked down 1,000 times, get up 1,000 times. And then comes the promise. If you do it that way, that's part of it. Your creator, Punkashla, grandfather, is going to see you, creator. Then it says, here's the real foundation of the covenant. When one sits in the sacred hoop of the people, one must be responsible. That means no backbiting, no gossiping, no slander. We speak directly to one another with kindness and compassion, all in the Constitution and bylaws, so to speak, or the covenant that we came to in Palenque and through that first Reunion Condor and Quetzal Eagle gathering there, March 17th to the 22nd, 2023. And then, then it says, and if you do it that way, you know, whatever you ask for, that's exactly the way it's going to be. Exactly the way it's going to be and proceed as such. So I'd like to share, if I may, hey, Chanuki, Takuya Tinku, H2KO. Ho, so Kawaji, you are a Takiki, Hexuyo, Papio, Lay Chanuki, Takuya Tinku, H2KO. Holy Kelly, too, Holy Kelly, too, Holy Kelly, too. Hey, Chanuki, Takuya Tinku, H2KO. Ho, so Kawaji, you are a lota kiki, Vexio Papio. Hey, Chanuki, Takuya Tinku, H2KO. Mano he medo, Chidu Pasava medo, Howley Michante, Washte. Aho.
Thank you, Chief Phil. And I want to just, out of respect, and I also want to send prayers and condolences to our brother Jon, who's here. He's truly a warrior, and I don't want to say too much. I know he's had, like many of us, some challenges lately, but we do appreciate him showing up, because a big part of these coming together of the eagle and condor, and as the quetzal and the hummingbird, is bringing these large hoops together. And of course, I had the honor to be with you in Blanque, Chief Phil. And I know Jon now, I believe, has about over 80 tribal affiliations of people who are joining this Indigenous land sovereignty movement. But I would like to welcome Jon.
So just a little adjustment there. We do not have that many. I wish we had that many signed right now. We only have 62 that are signed right now. And a couple of them, I'm hearing they're physically not on this, their signatures are not on the treaty yet, but they have given their intention and sent their signatures and thumbprints and logos over to be added to the treaty. We are pending some other nations, some from Australia and some from the Pacific Rim. But again, those have been held up. And even though we have their verbal commitments, they have not signed the treaty yet. And there could be a lot if that happens soon. 108 in the Pacific Rim, and there's over 369 nations in the landmass known as Australia alone. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, I like to open up our meetings by saying that the Alliance of Indigenous Nations are 62, soon to be 162 sovereign Indigenous nations aligning together to reclaim their land, resources, and freedom for all people on Mother Earth. Because we are doing this for everyone, all people. And in keeping with the eagle and the condor prophecy, when the eagle of the north soars with the condor of the south, the people of the four directions will come together, and that is already in process. That paradigm shift is already in full go, and it will not be stopped. That's my perspective from a global perspective, from hearing from all these nations around the world. every day another nation is standing up, and it's a juggernaut now that it's just going to continue. And once people see the way of life that we can all have, and I'm talking about more time, more energy, more health, more wealth, and the health, the time and energy to enjoy that prosperity, the old paradigm is just going to disintegrate. Nobody will ever go back to that. When they see people thriving under this new paradigm, it's over. The old is done and the new is in. And so I'm blessed to be here today. I'm honored that Michael asked me to come. We have a lot of family stuff going on at the moment. And so I promised him that I would be here. He asked me if I would talk a little bit. First of all, my nation, if you're not familiar with my nation, I am with the Asmin Nation, Anishinaabe, Salutria, Métis, Indigenous Nation. My Grand Chief is Wabisca Muckwa, who adopted me. And I live in an area known as the landmass known as Northern Ontario. And the watershed is the Lake Huron. And so I am not there at the moment because I'm traveling, but that is primarily where I spend most of my time. And that's where my journey with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations really took off. And when I started to hear firsthand of the abuses and things that were happening to our clan mothers, our hereditary chiefs, and our clan chiefs, I was immediately drawn in. Of course, I had been for years sweating and ceremonies and things, but it wasn't until I heard of these atrocities and things that were still happening, and unbeknownst to me and my ignorance still, I didn't realize that it was still going on at the rate that it's still going on. So I'm committed. And with that said, though, there's a couple of things that I'd like to share with the group. In the last week or two, there's been an attempt to infiltrate the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. And I'm going to guess that's because we're very, very close to noticing the Crown Corps, the Vatican Corps, the USA Corp, the United Nations Corp, and we're getting the game plan, or at least the objective was to send that notice by the end of April. And so it doesn't surprise me that these forces are coming out at this time to try to stop us. I am not going to let it stop us. It's always a few that are lacking some integrity or misinformation or lack of information that these things result. And so hopefully we'll be able to put that out very quickly this week. But I want to share, just be aware. I've been very open with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. People always ask me, how do you secure who's in the group, who's not in the group. And my feeling has always been open heart, open mind. It's open to everybody that has an open heart and open mind. And as long as they go in a good way. If they don't, then they're banished until they can come back in a good way. So that's how I've sort of treated things. And that's how will continue to treat things. So I wanted to share that. Michael, if there's something specific that you'd like me to share, like a little bit on land sovereignty, I would.
Thank you. I wanted just to introduce a couple more people, and then we're going to come back full circle, because everyone who is presenting has a deep wealth of knowledge and is actively. We're not just here to, as my native friends say, from the Mount Shasta area, the Wintu, that we're not here just to tickle ears or have pipe dreams. This council is bringing together the people who are carriers of the hoops and facilitating this work at a very high level, both spiritually, politically, governmentally, legislatively, all of these things. So I would like to just introduce a couple of people to share who they are and where they are and their affiliations, and then we'll come back full circle, if that's okay. again, thank you so much, Jon. I want to acknowledge I've been working with her for years, and when we come around, we wanted to kind of have her talk a little bit about her work with individual sovereignty, but that has really expanded in many areas. I want to introduce Marsha Willardson to our conversation, and I've had the honor to work with her in Northern California in the Sacramento River watershed. At that time of my life, I was living in the territories of the Nisinan and the mountain Maidu people in the Sacramento River watershed. And we were able to create a community hub and do many things. Now creators moved me to Colorado, but I would like to introduce Marsha Willardson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. I am Marsha, and I sit on the land of the Maidu and the Nisinan in Northern California. I have spent my journey in looking and finding my own individual sovereignty has been lifelong. I remember as a young girl sitting in the woods and watching the bee fly jump from flower to flower and knowing and feeling that sovereignty that lived in me as the bee fly taught me the ways of nature. And in 1990 and 1992, I was adopted by Papi Garahasty to the Chippewa Nation, and in 2010 adopted to the Sovereign Squamish government by Siam Kaplanok. And I am to have my true indigenous, my indigenous being in a way that is evolving for me daily. And what I've done over the last years is in the early 80s, I had a piece of property and there were 3 silver maple trees, beautiful, beautiful maple trees. And beside the silver maple trees was a shed, a potting shed for our gardens. And my husband decided he was going to clean the potting shed. So he took all these pots out and put them under the silver maple trees. And the grass grew up in the summer, and then it got brown in the summertime, and then it withered in the fall, and then the rains came down in the winter, and then the snow came down in the winter, and then it came back up in the spring. But every time I went past those pots and walked to the clothesline or to go to the gardens, in my mind I would say, why doesn't he do something about those pots? He started that job, why doesn't he finish it? And I had this whole conversation for the conflict between me and him going on every time I saw those pots. So this went on for a long time. One day I walked out there and this conversation went off, and all of a sudden I stopped because I had the realization, like Chief Phil says, if I see it, I have responsibility in the matter. And there was a part of me that wanted to say, no, I don't want to be responsible for that. Because it was not just about the clay pots. It was about everything that I see, everything that people were saying about the life wasn't the way, life wasn't in harmony, life was, they're doing it to us. And so I started deeply studying the war powers and how the context of where we live and what happened to our cultures was laid over time and gradually encroached upon our domestic tranquility, on our peace of life. And in that, I found this conduit back to that peace, that neutrality that really lives our individual sovereignty, that really gives us that no opinions, no argument, and it brings us back to that place where we are capable at 0 point of creating the individual sovereignty, of creating the spirituality, of creating the culture we intend to be. And we're not human doings, even though we do a lot. We are human beings, and in that being, what we do emerges as that sovereignty. And so I'm still learning. I'm learning the song of the grandmother. Now I am a grandmother and taking that mantle and seeing how the study that I've done and the fight that I've done and the fight that we've waged is really to our detriment, and how it has overshadowed that heart of our sovereignty that we wish to have. You know, it being resisting, if we know in circuitry, a resistor is what heats up. So resistance actually adds energy to the momentum that's going on. So how do we take and diffuse, like in Hawaii with the Ho'oponopono? I am responsible. I heal it right now in myself. I see and return it to love. And in that, the war powers has no energy. We literally, I call it legal jujitsu when we get down into the legal manifestations of it. But I see the way and have been shown the way for us to bring our own individual harmony and bring the beauty of the indigenous culture, which our culture, our early American culture is modeled after the beauty of the blending of the thinking woman, the blending of the thinking chiefs into the world, the blending and the united balance of the feminine and the masculine in the expression of our culture. And how do we see the war powers in such a way that we're empowered by it instead of argumentative to it, instead of fighting to get there? How do we walk past those breached treaties of the war power makers and we walk back to our peace pipe treaty? We walk back to those treaties that go all the way back to 451 AD and make up the law of nations, in which the greatest injustice is a breach of peace, a breach of domestic tranquility. How do we stand there in that neutrality and be the sovereign that alters the outcome? That's our individual sovereignty. And we don't look outside of ourselves for it. We don't look to the clay pots. We don't look to my husband to fix it because he started it. I look to myself to see, oh, I could pick them up and put them away. And my whole argument, my whole conversation would be gone. That's the sovereignty. That's the movement. That's the genuine gift that we bring in the healing all the sins of the fathers that are now, the veils are coming from our eyes so we can see those sins, to take responsibility for them and bring to our culture, bring to our community, bring to that inner peace into the expression of our culture, back to the peace of the planet, back to the peace that blows the wind under the condor and the eagle. We are the wind under the wings when we come from that peace of pure neutrality, pure love, pure peace. And that's what I found, and studied deeply into the war powers. So I found that path that takes us to the law of nations through the writings of the war powers. And then beyond that, to those treaties that made the war power, made the law of nations, to the Iroquois Confederation that made our Constitution, to the heart of the indigenous culture that really is the heart of the whole world.
Right. Thank you so much, Marsha. And I just want to add that Marsha does a lot of consulting around things like private memberships and land trusts. She's also doing some projects, and when she comes back around, I know she has a lot of knowledge about her work with the Squamish and wampum belts and other things. But that's part of when we get into the heart of the conversation. So thank you so much, Marsha. I do want to introduce, and I just want to honor a few of the people in the room that I was personally committed to help bring our hoops and bridges together. And you spoke about Ho'oponopono and the importance of reconciliation, because through our past, whether it's our own personal experiences or actions that we've done, or the trauma that we carry, or any offenses or injury or harm, or any responsibility that our ancestors have had towards any injury or genocide, that there's a whole aspect of this sovereignty about how we do this reconciliation with each other. And that was such a perfect segue. I'd like to introduce a great brother that I'm doing Build Back Green collaboration with him. He works in Hawaii. He also works in Asia, and he wears many hats. And like many people here on this call, every day he's doing amazing things to help architect and build the world that we want to live in. I'd like to introduce our brother, Leiven Hwang.
Michael, thank you so much for your kind introduction. And thank you everyone here for this honor of this moment to speak and to share about myself. My name is Leiven Hwang. I live on the island of Maui. And I'd like to first reflect how deeply touched and inspired I am by all of you who've already spoken and shared. Gail, Chief Phil Lane, Jon, and Marsha. The passion and wisdom and integrity with which each of you express yourselves touches me deeply and is received by me so powerfully. So thank you all so much. Here on Maui, I'm the regional director for a nonprofit, Atayal, also called Indigenous Bridges. And our mission at Indigenous Bridges is to help foster and support active collaborations between Indigenous communities from around the world. Our founder, Tony Coolidge, has been based in Taiwan for almost the last 20 years. And so we've been working all that time with the Aboriginals in Taiwan, the indigenous people there. And Tony will soon be moving to the Pacific Northwest, to Washington State near Seattle, where he's already developed many relationships, and we're excited to deepen relationships with those peoples in those areas, in that area. And here on Hawaii, I've been working closely with Kimukeo Kapahulea. He is my kumu here on Maui. I continue to support what he's doing in every way that I can, learn so much from him. And what's been such a beautiful aspect of a focus of his work at this time is that he's been very much prioritizing work in Taiwan with the indigenous communities there, because he knows that it is from Taiwan that his people came to Hawaii. And the indigenous folks in Taiwan have for a long time set aside or lost the ways of navigating on the ocean, canoeing on the ocean. And a large part of Uncle Kimakeo's work right now is in revitalizing and rekindling that knowing and that wisdom. And so he's been donating canoes to the tribes in Taiwan, and also guiding and teaching them how to return to the oceans on those canoes again. And he has also been offering such important guidance in the main project that I'm involved with here on Maui, which is to hopefully by the end of May have the first 21 of 88 emergency shelters ready for families who lost their homes in the Lahaina fires to move into. This is a project that from the beginning, we have consulted with and fully engaged the Hawaiian community in Lahaina on the west side of Maui, ensuring that at every step of the way, we have had not only their consent, but their support in how we've envisioned this project and how we're moving forward with it. And our hope is that not only will the work we do on this part of the land house 88 families, but that it will be a model for future emergency response in the state of Hawaii, as well as expand into future opportunities to build permanent regenerative communities on Maui and other parts of Hawaii, communities that fully honor the Hawaiian people and their ways and knowing and wisdom of how to live with the land, how to nourish the land, that it may nourish us in return. And in so doing, be able to shift away from the need for relying on government or private corporation controlled infrastructure, so that as much as possible, these homes, these communities are anchored to and being supported by all the natural abundance and resources that the land, the sky, and the sea provides us. And I feel like there's so much more I would love to share. There's many others.
Well, don't run off yet. We have some time, and I know some people had limited time. So again, thank you. And we have really another 2 hours to kind of dig in here. And so far, what everyone said, of course, is it's prophetic, it's powerful, it's more than just the words. And the reality of the work that Chief Phil Lane has been doing, and we did invite also Hector Benton, who will be coming onto the call from Mexico, from Naciones Ancestrales, who is part of the Eagle, Condor, Quetzal, and Hummingbird work. And also, we're waiting to receive our brother, Marcelo Zaiduni, who is in the South, in Bolivia, who is part of the Condor Nation, will be joining us. But we also know that at this time, the need for reconciliation, the need to honor the traditional knowledge and the indigenous communities to help us lead the way in this vision and effort for world peace, for the sovereignty of land, our relationship to it, and our relationship to each other. And we also know through many teachings and prophecies, this is a global movement also. So very briefly, I just wanted to honor very quick, and then we're going to go back to really getting into kind of the guts of what this discourse is about. And again, if you're here, not as a presenter, at the end, we will have a roundtable, and we appreciate you just listening and writing down your questions so we can have this inclusive council. But I wanted to just welcome very briefly, I know he's not a presenter and might not be prepared to speak, but recently I had the honor to meet Robert, and Robert Meswigwe, I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, is in Uganda, Africa. And I'm bringing this in because this movement is now, through the Sacred Eighth Fire, is connecting the mycelial web of Mother Earth, and people are coming together. But he is in Uganda with his organization, Rejoice Africa. He's doing amazing work with youth, with education, with reforestation, with working around food and water security. And as we go through the conversation, giving our Indigenous Wisdom Keepers and representatives first voice, the idea was to also talk about sovereignty, but also self-sustainability and regenerative stewardship. And there's a lot of people who are not on the call, and some who are on the call, like the work you're doing, Leiven in Hawaii and Asia, with the guidance of Indigenous elders, and doing things with right protocol in the right way. Also, other people on this call that have done amazing work. Rachel Linden, who actually introduced me to Jon and the Alliance for Indigenous Nations, from Non-Toxic Communities. She's doing amazing work. So again, all of you on this call are doing things. And like Marsha said, we're not just complaining about the problems, we're creating solutions. But I just wanted to invite, just for a moment, our brother Robert to come on, and just maybe for a moment or two, Robert, just say hello and share a little bit about your work, and then we're going to transition. So welcome, Robert. No problem, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm West Robert from Uganda in East Africa. I'm a founder, CEO of Rejoice Africa Foundation, which is a non-profit organization registered in the Republic of Uganda, fully legally permitted to operate in the whole parts of Uganda, and we are doing climate restoration, education for all, and water supply, and also sanitation and hygiene. We have done agroforestry, where we are thinking about carbon stores, to reduce carbon stores, carbon emission, and also reduce the heat to save the next generation. We have also managed to help the school children to get the scholastic materials. We have also worked on distributing clean water to people in the communities where there is water scarcity. And we have also helped these young girls to access the sanitary pads, and also to access the education in the schools, and also help them to learn how to save for their next generation. We have done some great work on the ground, and now we are working with Michael in the regenerative project to see that how we can use the indigenous knowledge to help the next generation from this current crisis where we are, and everything it is going on well. Only we need your prayers and support towards achieving what we are doing here in Uganda, and will be great. I'm going to share our website in the chat so that you can read about our website, and if you feel touched, you can reach us on the contact, and we see how we can discuss how we can continue the mutual partnership with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert. And again, we're going to come back to you in a little bit, but we did want to bring up, because today, a big part of this is the people who are helping to bring back the spiritual truth and the reality, and the legal reality of indigenous sovereignty and indigenous land sovereignty. So part of that also is that we're looking at things also about self-sustainable and regenerative solutions. So I don't want to have to say too much or take up too much air. I'm here as a bridge today and a facilitator, but there are literally hundreds of people standing by to deploy sustainable and regenerative solutions and support for indigenous communities, and communities all around the world. So I'm not going to get deeply into that. I also just want to acknowledge very briefly, before we really dig in here, I see Rachel Linden. I know that she's in the middle of things. Rachel, do you want to just make an appearance and share very briefly about your work and how you're working to clean up communities and the work that you've been doing for decades?
Sure. My name's Rachel Linden. I was for many years the vice president of Non-Toxic Communities, where we advocated for organic land care standards in municipal spaces. But currently now I am the executive director of Green Lifestyles Network, and we are a 501c3 bringing people together around sustainability. But to answer your few questions in the beginning, I am in a county island near Austin in the Republic of Texas. My ancestry were refugees and God-fearing farmers. My tribe is single mothers and activists. And my current project, of which Michael and I are working on, is a 50-acre ARC learning farm in Northeast Texas called Redemption Farms. And so I've been working on that recently, even though I do also have projects running in California and in Hawaii. Texas is the biggest project by far, the 50-acre learning farm. We just closed escrow on the last parcel of the 50 acres and took a glorious bushwhacking tour of all of the land that I'm stewarding, and it's glorious, and what a blessing from above. Anyhow, and that is what I'm working on now, and I am humbled by being in this great group of elders and leaders, and we have blended and overlapping passions, and I can't wait to see how we can assist each other in forwarding the consciousness of all of us and stepping into this new prophetic time zone that engages right now following the stars and ancient prophecies for this time. And I am just encouraged and blown away with the magnitude of the people coming around this round table. And like I said, I'm humbled and thankful. And I will yield the floor. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. And so we want to start to get into really the heart of our discourse today, which again is individual sovereignty, indigenous sovereignty, indigenous land sovereignty, and sustainable regenerative stewardship, which of course is nothing new. It's been done for thousands of years through traditional ecological knowledge and the deep spiritual understanding of the harmonious interactions and relationships of human beings in nature. So I do want to say we are expecting Professor Alan Tratner. Unfortunately, you know, since the original fire, Maui had another fire, and they're also having an incredibly ferocious storm today, which is affecting communication. But Professor Tratner, one of the co-founders of Earth Day, who has incubated almost 400 nonprofits and works with regenerative and green technology, who's bringing very practical solutions into this group that we're building these bridges with the decision makers and the people who are at the forefront of this global movement led by our indigenous elders and wisdom keepers. So him and Hector will be joining us, but I at least wanted to acknowledge, and we're going to get right into the heart of this in a second, because there's a couple of people on the call, and we know that this is a global movement. I wanted to just honor for a moment, if you would like to share anything, our brother who I met in Palenque, Gary Walters. So if you'd like to come on camera, if not, that's fine, but we just want to honor you for a moment for all the work that you do.
Well, thank you, Michael, but I'm on a noisy curbside coffee shop table here listening, but thank you. It was an honor to meet you, and I won't say much other than I'm happy to be here listening and connecting and supporting all of you, and just getting my feet wet with your circle there, trying to be an asset to it. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
And by the way, I am from British Columbia, the Eagle people in South Central British Columbia. My sister's the chief of the Eagle people. I'm very proud of her. And yeah, I live in small town British Columbia, Canada. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And since we know this is a global movement, and at the forefront of our movement is the concepts of not just air tickling, but how do we bring more peace? How do we bring more unity? How do we bring more collaborations between our communities? And I just want to honor my brother who is on the call, who just finished his fasting and honoring of the sacred time for our Muslim brothers and sisters. We just want to honor for a moment Nadim Chowdhury. So welcome, Nadim.
Thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to see you and connect, and a pleasure to connect and see all of you. Probably my first time hearing from me with some of you, as it is for me as well, and just here as a witness to hold space and to listen and to explore in any ways of involvement and how I can be of service. So it's a pleasure.
Great, thank you. So I would like to come back full circle, and we're gonna, because I know people have limited time. I wanted to come back full circle and really start to get into the heart of the conversation. I know Marsha and Jon have some very valuable information that they would like to share, but I wanted to at least come around full circle with respect to Grandmother Gail and Chief Phil Lane Jr., if they would like to share something. And then we're going to really talk more into the work that Marsha's doing with sovereignty and some of her work, if she wants to share about the Squamish tribe, and of course, Jon, so we can understand more the work of what the Alliance for Indigenous Nations is doing. And I'm really happy because recently him and we made a decision to bring together and support his community along with the Alliance for Regenerative Communities, which is 1,000 members strong, all solutionaries that are ready to be deployed to do the work that's needed to be done. But we've forged our collaboration and our brotherhood, which I would say probably goes beyond this life and very much true to many of the people here that are connected. So I just wanted to honor Grandmother Gail Thomas, and she said that she is okay at this point and just listening. So I will refer to our esteemed brother, Chief Phil from the North, and then we'll go to Marsha and Jon, and we'll start to really get aware of what's really happening on the ground with the movement. So again, Brother Chief Phil, thank you.
Well, I want to thank from the bottom of my heart all everybody who shared. I've been very helpful in terms of understanding how this all fits together. And I really want to say also that anything I'm saying here, that my brother Gary, right up north of me here, up in the mountains here north of the Salish Nations here where I live, that if he has anything to share, or if I'm any way or off, to please step in, because he's also equally a member of the Council of the Condor, Hummingbird, Quetzal, Eagle, and as Marcelo is as well, and others. So I just want to share that in that council. There's not any of us more than anybody else, just like the reality is that beloved sister shared about individual, just like Black Elk says, true peace begins here within us, right here. Then from there you go. Innately, inherently, we are born, each of us, a sovereignty, ancient and perishable and everlasting. And it's that sovereignty that we have to awaken to within our own being and become that sovereign being. And also at the same time, see others that way. So when we meet somebody, we don't meet their earth suit. We meet their soul. A soul that has no gender, has no race, no has ethnicity, no has class, because the soul is a reflection of a oneness of our Creator. And so this is where it begins, right here, in our soul here. Now, what I've done so that kind of people can have a chance if they choose to kind of see a little bit deeper what we're doing, because I think it's so important. As I've shared here, first of all, I shared a video called Healing the Hurts we made in 1985. 1986. We made the Honor of All story of Alkali Lake in 1985 that started the sobriety movement here in Canada. And then Healing the Hurts is when we really took on the boarding schools. That was 1986. And it was 19 years later that here in Canada, we at least got some kind of, there's no way to compensate for what happened, but at least something came back. And of course, there was a settlement individually, and then there was the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, and then there was, of course, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that never has been acted on they paid the money, but they never acted on the recommendations that have been so. Another reflects, by the way, the Sacred Covenant, which is the foundation adopted March 21st, 2023, of our this union that we're building across the Americas, as we all are. I think that of special note is the digital backbone, which we're sure going out for an RFP, which we've defined in detail of how to set up a sovereign network across, we call it the digital backbone. It has two ways. There's a whole document we wrote back and right after the bombing of over New York and all that stuff, called the Fourth Way. And so it's the fourth way. It's called the digital fourth way, or Indigenet. That's quite an exciting development. So I've shared there a number of things. So because there's no way in the short time we have, in respecting everybody's time and space, we're going to be able to get into all these details. But I've shared that, and it would be great. If Jon, if you or your team could put in your foundation documents, so Brother Gary and others who haven't got a chance to really now understand what's happening, to understand that, because I think that all, from my understanding, from what you're doing and what we're doing, it meshes like this. And especially, of course, anything that's spiritual has infinite meaning. And so when people begin thinking that my spiritual interpretations is good and yours is not, they're really off board, because spirituality is infinite. And spiritual understandings you might have had at 20 years old, I can tell you really differently when you're 80. So we're in draft, the universe is in draft. I thank you. I'll just be listening here. I'm going to have to go in not too long. That's why I've left the materials there, as my wife needed little errands here. But I'll be here for a while listening, and I look forward. This is just the beginning. And in terms of our overall movement, it's been unfolding even before 1492, the prophecy of the Rune Condor. That we just need to have breakfast yet. We're just getting started. And it's about this whole thing of going beyond the trust and disunity. The greatest issue facing Indigenous people, and I've said this for a long time, and I think anybody here have been in our communities and seen, is disunity. And that's the whole way the colonial mindset keeps us from coming together. And I think that's why, Jon, you're coming up on the radar, because anything that they're washing everything, anything that threatens this collapsing materialistic colonial system, it's like when you living up there in the north there, you've been hunting, you're a hunter, I'm sure. You know what a wild animal is like when they're dying. I mean, a real wild one, and they're dying. They're really dangerous. You got to be careful. We got to walk the spiritual path with practical feet here as well. So we don't want to be drawn out into an ambush. We don't want to engage in the negative thing. We want to come together in unity. And like the 15th principle of our 16 principles that was the first foundation of Four Worlds beginning in 1982, stand in our strength, stand in our spiritual strength. And we have a lot, tremendously, and when we take from our sisters our individual sovereignty and join together as sovereign individuals and sovereign nations. That's the strength we stand in. And we move the positive alternative we wish to create without giving away our energy fighting the negative. It's just a waste of energy. This system is going down. There's nothing going to stop it. There's no power on heaven or earth that's going to withstand the power of our Creator and our prophecies and our ceremonies and our prayers. Simple as that. Halimi chante washtelo, shinkmanohe meado, chinupasava meado, halimi chante washte. I look forward to listening for the rest of this. They call, I might, when it comes time when my wife is going to call me to accompany her, do a few little errands we have to do, then I'm just going to slip off, knowing that we have many times yet to visit. Halimi chante washte.
Great. Thank you again, Chief Phil Lane. And I want to again apologize. That was obviously like 6 or 7 people came in a strategic hack, and it brought up exactly what Jon was talking about with the Alliance for Indigenous Nations, about people trying to infiltrate, and of course what Chief Phil had said about Watiko. There are forces right now of disruption, of propaganda, of trying to derail and even pervert anything that we're doing. So that's why I never go direct to live broadcasting, and all of these videos are edited. That was the first time we've had that issue. But obviously, as things accelerate, those forces are trying to show up and be forces of disruption. I also know, again, I know Jon had limited time today, so I would like to explore and have him share a little bit directly what the Alliance for Indigenous Nations is doing and how they do it, because they have an incredible system. Not only dozens of member nations and chiefs and medicine people, but they have a well put together system on how they do it. So I want to welcome back Jon, and then we'll go to Marsha. Welcome, Jon.
Aloha. Just as you're introducing me, my 8-year-old daughter's calling me on the other line, so I just answered it so she can listen in for a few minutes. I'd like to just dovetail into what Chief was just saying.
Can you come on camera, Jon? Can you?
Oh, sorry, I thought I turned it on. Hang on.
Thank
you. There we go. My fault. Yeah, I want to dovetail on that because this is we've been able to escape these invasions, these infiltrations, and then all the way and something's happened this week. And so we just got to be very, very vigilant. I feel all of a sudden that these forces are coming hard at me, especially this week. I haven't been able to, I'm not focusing on it right now. I'm going to deal with it come Monday. I just want to share this one more time. My mother transitioned yesterday to the spirit world, and I'm trying to commune, be quiet today, and be with myself and feel my mother and my father, who's already passed. And but with all that said, there was an article that just came out. I didn't catch where Chief was in Canada, but there was an article that just came out that we need to be aware of as well up in Northern Turtle Island, and that was done by the Alberta Law Review. It is a 46-page article of pure fraud and defamation to vilify and defame the Indigenous, as well as any group, organization, or individual that has truly stood up and made a mark over the last 4 years or so, longer, depending where you're from and who you are. But what I say to that is, there would be no need to do that. It's testimony of everything that we are doing here today and talking about. It's testimony of the positive, substantial positive impact that we are all having, standing on our ground and holding this space and moving forward. So I share that with you because this is another way that the Crown tries to oppress, suppress, and subjugate all people. not just the indigenous, all people. So be aware of that. Alberta Law Review article. We're rebutting it as we speak. For those of you, like I've gotten to know Michael now and Rachel, for those of you that don't know what we're doing, I just want to take a second and explain the two main actions or three main actions of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. The first one is we have our International Peace Treaty, which is going around the world and being signed. It just slowed down a little bit the last 2 weeks or so. I don't think we got a new nation to sign on in the last 2 weeks. So it's been stagnant around 62. So if you know any nations that haven't signed the treaty, please, I'll try to put it in the chat here before we're done. And let's spread this thing around the world so as many people can sign on as possible. What's happened to me in the last couple of weeks is nations have reached out and said, we've done what you want to do. Notice the Crown, the Vatican, the UN Corp, and we've done it 18 years ago, but we were just one nation. Now we have the force of all the nations aligned and coming together. And that's how we are strong, sticking together, aligning with one another. So that is the crux of everything that we're doing. We're creating this umbrella. Nobody's over anybody. Nobody's under anybody. It is we are joined arm in arm, coming together and exercising our God-given, creator-given, endowed sovereignty. And so that is our main action right now. The second thing that the Alliance of Indigenous Nations is doing is we established the AIN Tribunal. The tribunal is a place where people can come and get justice. You do not have to be indigenous, but it is obviously based on indigenous law, customs, and traditions. And we are not about a penal system. We are about a restorative community system. That is where we are headed, as this penal system that's never, ever worked disintegrates. And so this is a place where you can literally come and obtain some type of justice if you need it in less than 30 days. And you can have a final order issued in your favor. I know people want to know about enforcement. So we're still in the enforcement process as we speak. We have to be very methodical, let's put it that way. And so hopefully in another 30 days or so, we'll have some better answers and some more success with that.
And Jon,
Yep.
Jon, I'm sorry, briefly, could you mention some of the nations that have signed on? And I also wanted just to mention, when we met, all of us in our ways, we do due diligence about what we align with and how we do things. So I do want to say again, everyone, make sure you have your microphones off, please. That part of today's meeting, what Tico Lee strangely got hacked by 6 or 7 people. I just want to reiterate that we're deeply committed to the Earthstock gathering, August 19th through 25th. So we'll have 7 days of council and coming together to strengthen the movement. So I just want to reiterate that, there's only so much we can do. And today, many of us are coming into this collaborative platform to kind of bring our hoops together and to strengthen and bolster each other and to connect our communities. So I just wanted to mention that, but could you talk about again how many and some of the nations and just kind of how you have a process? You have a whole team of spiritual leaders and tribal representatives and a legal mechanism to do what you're doing. You're not just talking about it or having this pipe dream. You actually are really digging in and bringing indigenous sovereignty, indigenous land sovereignty forward.
Okay, well, that's it's a little bit loaded. So the tribunal, I think what you're asking is how this tribunal is established and how is it lawful? Well, it's established pursuant to our inherent sovereignty. Okay, that inherent sovereignty, whether you like UNDRIP or a fan of UNDRIP or not, That inherent sovereignty was just restated, reaffirmed, confirmed in the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People. So we are using the UN's laws against them and asserting them against them because, as most of us know here today, that Article 1 of that of UNDRIP gives individuals, Article 3, the right to self-determination, Article 5 is the right to their own law systems. And Article 7, it even goes further to say that the Crown Corp and the USA Corp must protect that. So we're not resting our head on UNDRIP. We're resting our head on our inherent sovereignty that came way before European contact, number one. But UNDRIP, we are using it against the establishment to assert those rights, reassert those rights. So I want to be very clear about that because I know there's lots of people that first thing they hear UNDRIP, and that's the way that they're using to steal the lands from the people, right? So we got to be careful. And that is happening. That is truly happening, but that is happening with what we call banded/status nations. And it is not happening with the sovereign indigenous nations and the hereditary chiefs who will never sell out their birthright in exchange for mere benefits and privileges. So that is, this distinction needs to be made because many, many people still do not understand that distinction. So take a moment to make sure that that's clear. The tribunal until this week, again, we've been infiltrated a little bit. It's been about 14 judges, 2 judges from 7 continents, give or take here and there. And when somebody can't make it, makes it, or has to leave for some reason. And we've been issuing orders for over a year now, I believe. And like I said, we're in the process of enforcing those orders as we speak. And the third action that I want to share is, for those that aren't aware of it yet, is our international guest speaker Zooms, which are every other Thursday. We may be extending it to every 3 or 4 weeks just so we can get more work done, because we're finding that there's more and more action items that need to be taken care of immediately, and it takes a lot of time to prep for these things. So rather than constantly prepping, we rather be getting more action accomplished. So that may be changing in the very near future. I'd like to talk a second about land patents, since this is land sovereignty. I know Marsha, I believe, has worked with Ron in the past, Ron Gibson. Ron is a great guy when it comes to land patents. And at the end of 2023, Ron and I did a land patent up on my land up in northern Turtle Island in the Midland area. And I want to share this because every time we take an action, no matter what it is, there is always some risk. I don't consider it risk, though. I consider it opportunity. But people like to call and say, well, you know, what if I do this? This could happen and that could happen. That's part of standing on our rights and exercising our rights. So a typical, in my example, just a concrete example that I can share with everybody is, I had a lender, my lender, where my mortgage is on my home, all of a sudden they must have got wind that I've claimed allodial title to my land. Why do I say that? Because they're threatening to close my bank account down that my mortgage payments are made out of. Now, this is very important. Why would that happen? Why would my bank call me and do that? The answer is because it's effective, and they know it's effective, and they don't want others escaping their clutches. Okay, otherwise there'd be no reason for them to take the time out to do that. Just like there'd be no reason for the Alberta Law Review to put out a 46-page article. So this is just one way, okay? And this is another big point. If you read some of the older colonial Supreme Court cases, you're going to see where there's only one thing that trumps, that I know of, maybe Marsha knows something different, that trumps these patents. And that is where title was belonged to the indigenous, and it was stolen and never passed down, which is most of the lands, all of the lands. So even the colonial system recognizes in these very old cases that the indigenous lands, untreated lands, trump these patents. Marsha, do you agree with that? But anyway, so there she is.
In a way, and not in a way. There's a lot that has been going on in my mind as you're speaking. And one of the things I see this vision, like our mind is like a whale going through the ocean, and a new mind is birthed as a young whale. But as this young whale goes through the swimming through the ocean, it starts picking up barnacles. And those barnacles are a way of speaking, a way of thinking, a way of doing, a way of arguing, a way of defending ourselves, a way of interpretation, a way of drawing conclusions. And as we're going through and building those barnacles, we're trying to swim as a clear whale, not realizing that we're carrying those barnacles, just like that hack that just came in. I had to observe myself and what is my body doing? How am I feeling with this hack that came in? And then seeing myself, I cut off and then came back in, just like Chief Phil said, get up again. Here we come. That is an opportunity to see and observe ourselves in the face of the opportunity, the potential to take another barnacle, to build another conclusion, to speak another fight. And in fact, it was a huge opportunity to see my willingness to step back in, to be that sovereign being, to come in, and to see Michael's beautiful ability to work the technology to get us back into the conversation, for us to all come back in and stand up again, to speak again, in the face of anything that's trying to attach itself as the barnacle to our thinking. And for me, I've been so deeply into the idea of land patents, and we see but I see them all, that all those land patents were made by your empire builders, your conquest, your wars, your war treaties, your things. How can you have a pure ownership, stewardship of the land by making a treaty with somebody who stole it in the first place? A stolen property does not belong to the thief, no matter how many treaties you make on top of it. So when we go back to our relationship with the land, and there's an indigenous culture emerging where even in the face of those war powers, first in line liens have been made for stewardship. The true standing on the land above and beyond any of those conquest treaties, the conquest patents, the gift to the soldiers of a grant of land because they couldn't pay them for fighting the Civil War. Those are the treaties that we're talking about under patents. Those are the things that we don't, yes, we can claim them. And it is a part of pulling the barnacles off in the clarity of our thinking. But at the same time, once we get those barnacles off, there's a whole nother thinking happens. Going back to the 451 AD Bible that holds the 6 international treaties, the Peace Pipe Treaty, we can claim that it's still there. Just like the land patents, they're still there. We can bring them forward. We can have ownership, but we know in our thinking of an indigenous thinking, ownership is an insanity. We don't own it. We're the stewards here, and we failed in our stewardship by not recognizing the barnacles and how to clear them. So in fact, yes, the land patent is a step in clearing the war powers. But I'll tell you why they don't see it, why they don't enforce it, and why they're not coming. Because there's a public trust that's been created. And each one of us has stepped in that public trust through Social Security, through some kind of attachment, through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, through the taking of state authorized 501c3s that we have to step and fetch to the authority. And we don't understand that that is the consent to be in a trust, a public trust, in which we're considered minors because we're not competent to handle our own affairs and think without barnacles.
Well said, Marsha.
So there's a place, yes, where that is a real important rung on the ladder of clearing the barnacles. It is not the conclusion, though. It's the path.
Absolutely. I love your outlook. And you just touched on something today. There was a case that I just forwarded to my Grand Chief and our Attorney General. And it was basically about the public trust. This nation was so happy because they just got recognized in the landmass known as Chicago, Illinois. But what they did is they put the land in the public trust for the United States to manage. And this is the type of stuff that we have to get away from. And so, yeah, I agree with Martin or Marsha. It's just a step in the rung. These were our lands before European contact, right? And we did only steward them. And so when we say we're reclaiming the land, the resources, and our freedom, we don't mean they're ours. We mean we were the first here to steward them. We have the first prior claim, superior claim, and welcome everybody who's welcome, providing their caring for future protecting and preserving for future generations. And if that's not the case, then they're not welcome.
Excuse me for interrupting. The powers that be are not seeing and not responding because we are still standing in the place of a minor, of an incompetent, of a savage. And when they can't see us as clear sovereigns, where we've cleared ourselves from the consent, where we've stepped into them seeing us as a minor, when we can come into that full, for want of a better term, I'll call it secured party creditor position in their vision, then they'll see us there. We not only have to bring our lands out, we have to bring our out and disconnect from the barnacles.
May I just share something just briefly, please? You know, I think that what's just occurred up here in Haida Gwaii is an incredible inspiration of what is possible. As you may know, over here in British Columbia, except for 6% of the 6% of the land, there's never, ever been treaty signed. This is totally a theft. I mean, the rest of it is a theft, and because there was no free treaty signed, free prior and informed consent. There was none of that, or informed either. But here in British Columbia, no treaties. I'm sitting in sovereign, unsurrendered land. And one of the great brothers that that you'll get a chance to meet here is Gu Zhao. And maybe you know of Gu Zhao, Chief Gu Zhao of Haida Gwaii. So the first thing they did was, and we're doing the same thing here, we're renaming everything. I mean, just think about it. I mean, think about people with the arrogance to come and name everything. Right out here next to me is King George Avenue, Vancouver, Victoria. I mean, all these names, most all these names are named after some English person. With all due respect to our English relatives, but you know, I'm sure those names go really nice over in England. And so what he did was first he changed the name of Queen Charlotte Islands to Haida Gwaii. And we just got the news, and I put it in the thing, that essentially agreement's been made to completely surrender all sovereignty to the Haida Gwaii, all sovereignty of the several hundred islands they have. And so I think that what they've done there in terms of actualizing what it is that we want to do, they're certainly to be learned from. I'm not saying that they're only solution. Can you imagine the entire title has been returned to the Haidas? Haida Gwaii is now indigenous lands. Now, what they have done is that in terms of things like the hospital systems and so on, although they still have the control over them, those kinds of things that were agreed to in the beginning, those will still be. And they've also, there's a small amount of title, but by the way, that's another thing they've done. There's some people have come and moved up there and have houses and so forth. So they took them in too, but they're actually now citizens of Haida Gwaii. But they also did it in a manner, in fact, the people who came there and the way they treated them, they've stood behind the Haidas in this whole battle. That's our other relatives from other places who are indigenous people of other lands. So I just want to bring your attention to that. And with that, I'm going to put a bookmark here. I'll listen in, and then I'm going to need to do some things with my wife. But it's been a tremendous, great visit. And I want to sit and listen as long as I can. And thank you so much, Michael, for hosting this. And we shall talk soon.
Thank you so much, Chief Phil. I do want to say we have 7 days in August for us all to gather, because even using technology, I know that this had come up even in, here comes Alenka, it comes up even in the event in Palenque. What is held within sacred and kind of a more inner council discussion, what should be recorded and what should be broadcasted. So again, in invitations going out and then invitations being shared with others, that I just want to reiterate, in the future, these will be closed councils, which will be rebroadcasted. And we're finding out right now in our effort to be inclusive that these things are can be hacked and are infiltrated. And actually, I won't say much, but there was also people who came on the call. I know that other people alerted me to them hacking into or kind of infiltrating or trying to derail the work they're doing. I want to mention, I think Chief Phil had it or others had posted it. There was a article that would be great to share in the chat about what happened, as Phil mentioned, in the Haida territories. And I know there is a lot of work right now. I've in collaborating and working with Marsha for at least 6 years, and the bioregional hub that was started in Northern California in the traditional territories of the Maidu, the Nisinan, the Miwok, and also the Washoe people, that when we did this work, there was a lot of inspiration about this concept of sovereignty, which of course I think all of us agree true sovereignty comes within ourself and our connection to the creator and spirit, but also the idea of our physical sovereignty. I think a lot of that was brought into light during the global shutdown that occurred during the pandemic. And now the discussion has gone into land sovereignty with things like public private membership associations, different types of trusts, different types of configurations. I have talked with Ron Gibson. He's working here in Crestone with Peter May, who just submitted for his land patent, and we'll find out how that goes. But I think what's coming to light is, and there's a famous saying, trying to escape the matrix by using the system that creates the matrix can be very challenging, and it puts a lot of us out really on the front lines. So on that, I'd like to acknowledge the work that everyone's doing here and the incredible success that Jon and the Alliance for Indigenous Nations has had. And there will be more discussions in the future, but also the importance of keeping the spiritual centeredness on the work that we're doing. And as Marsha has taught a lot about with people coming into a space of neutrality. So I want to go to Marsha, because she's worked in all these different areas. and I'm not sure if it can be divulged. I have been looking, and the room is definitely secure. I have direct knowledge of all the people in here. I know Hector will be joining from Mexico. He's finally getting Wi-Fi signal in Mexico, and we also have Professor Tratner here, and the benefit of his 50 some odd years of working with self-sustainability and stewardship. So we're getting through this, but staying on sovereignty. Marsha is doing incredible work, and I know part of sovereignty is not just personal sovereignty, our spiritual sovereignty, our physical body sovereignty, sovereignty of the land and our communities, but it's also the sovereignty around a controlled economic matrix of enslavement using the fiat dollar, which is now being disrupted through BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, not using the petroleum dollar anymore, and also the economic, and also coming into this idea of sovereignty. And I don't like to use the word governance, but self-governance, facilitation, going back towards the knowledge of our traditional communities and council and the advisorship of our elders. So there's a lot of different aspects we can't cover in just this couple hours together. But I would like to go to Marsha just to really dig into some of the amazing insights and progress that she's making, and so glad, AIN and Jon with his constituency is collaborating with Marsha, and again the honor to bring Chief Phil Lane into this discussion, and as Marsha was saying, bring the wind into the wings of the eagle, condor, and the Quetzal hummingbird. But I'd like to go over to Marsha for a minute, but also, again, just to be honorable and acknowledge, I do see from Colombia right now, we have our brother Felipe from Gaia Union, who's doing amazing work there. I see Luciana Colibri, who is working with the Kogi Council in South America. And also even from Europe, we have Alenka, who was at the Palenque gathering, who got acknowledged for her years of work through the Jaguar Award. So before we go to Marsha, if we could just take 30 seconds, if you guys would like to come on screen, we just want to acknowledge our brother Felipe from Gaia Union. And
hello, family. To meet you
Aloha,
here.
Felipe.
Well, I'm just very happy to hear what you just shared, and especially because the real reflection that we have to get at some point is to live steward life as a whole in the present, and how we are gonna distribute this stewardship is what we are mostly focused on. Can we really create this alliance of consciousness and the wish to see all ways of life thriving in a world that really needs this unity and this feeling of we are all one, taking care of all life. So, well, I'm happy to be hearing a lot of the work that you're doing, and here to weave more threads in the near future. Many blessings.
Great. Good to see you, brother. And again, you're doing incredible work. And I know we're learning about all the networks that you're connecting through Gaia Union. Also from Colombia, we just want to take a moment to honor Luciana Colibri. So welcome, Colibri.
Thank you, dear brother Michael. Blessings and greetings to all of you. I am here by the ocean in the base of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, ancestral territory. I've just been listening to you and weaving all of this understanding about land stewardship and sovereignty. I came to the Sierra 9 years ago and was invited by an elder mamo to become an intercultural guardian of ancestral land. I feel this is a very important strategy for our modern world, because there are many ways of recovering land. And one of them is by working with people like us who have land and who want to reinstall it and reclaim it as ancestral territory, recognize it really as ancestral territory, and learn to steward the land in the ancestral law, in the law of origin. So this could be a very good strategy because we need to work together in intercultural alliances, not just indigenous. The indigenous alliances are very important, but we become stronger when we come together with people from all different directions that are coming together in these times for the rights of life. This is something that's universal and planetary. So I'm hoping to come to Crest Zone and to share more with you. Also on Monday, on Earth Day, I will be speaking more about the process that we've lived here with the Kogi elders in learning about ancestral stewardship in an intercultural alliance. So thank you so much for all of your beautiful and important efforts. From here, sending you my golden thoughts and thread so that we can continue to stand up for our Madre Tierra, our Pachamama. Thank you.
Great, and thank you for saying that, because I know in Nevada County, where I used to live, I won't take up too much time at the moment. We have a lot to talk about, but it was one of the most horrific areas during the gold rush. Actually, more people lived in Nevada County than in the San Francisco Bay Area. And during the gold rush, which was responsible for a lot of horror and genocide to the indigenous communities there, that a lot of the land through organizations have been doing fundraising, and like you were mentioning, are giving and titling back the land to currently to the Nisenan tribe, who now have a premier storefront in the downtown of Nevada County, which talks about the traditional original people, stewards of that land, and how they're acknowledged. And there's a gallery and there's an area to support the tribe. So it's another place that people have taken the solutions into their own hands. And I think part of this call today is starting to explore what are the possibilities, what are the platforms, what are the methodologies that we can continue to do this. And I just want to say briefly, when we did our World Unity Gathering, and this is how I came to have the honor to know Chief Phil. I was working since 1987 in connection with some of the Hopi elders, grandfather David Manunge, Thomas Banyaka, who was a prophecy keeper, and had the honor to meet many other people. And I will say, the things that I've learned, I've only used in my own personal life and work. I've never tried to appropriate it or commercialize it or sell it, which is another issue that can be challenging at this time of sharing knowledge and wisdom. But during that gathering, we had over 10,000 people who showed up. I see our brother Marcelo is coming to join the call too, also from South America. But during that gathering, the actual federal government came in and shut down the Northern Arizona University Sky Dome, where we were having the event, and also a huge campground on a lake. So at that point, I went and spoke with the traditional people up at Big Mountain, which is a joint shared area between the Hopi and the Dene people, a very sacred place up at Big Mountain. And of course, the government has fabricated this war between the indigenous, and we have to go in and intervene and elect puppet governments who can represent the interests of Peabody Coal and the extractive, colonial, patriarchal, capitalistic mindset. Well, we had went up and met with some of the traditional people there and got permission to do the World Unity Gathering there. Well, up at the event, days before it was supposed to start, the Black Suburbans showed up and the federal government showed up with the National Guard. I was asked to come and have a meeting at the tribal headquarters at that time with the Hopi. And again, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm just sharing a story because in my understanding at this point, the Hopi are also another tribe that never signed a treaty with the United States federal government, although there is a government-appointed tribal council. But at that point, with the traditional people present, and Vernon Mayesava, who at that time was the tribal president for the Navajo, the Dene Nation, were all in support of the gathering, and the event was blocked by the vote of the tribal president of the Hopi tribe. And at that point, they sent in the National Guard and the military. So some people decided to make a stand there on the land and support the traditional people up a big mountain. And many of us decided to avoid conflict, that we would move onto the national forest land, and at that point kind of exercise our constitutional right to gather. Well, at that point, in that confluence of moments, and the divine will of Creator playing out, that's when I met Chief Phil Lane, and that was the same time of the birth of Miracle, now the several of white buffalo that were born. And at that time, it was acknowledged as a very powerful prophetic sign by many different traditional people. And that's when Chief Phil did the earth staking ceremony. So I wanted to share that, because since that moment, I've continued to try to take to heart and take serious my commitment of staking myself to be a defender and protector of the earth. So again, there's many different approaches to this work, and this is why through this council we're discussing some of the ideas and methodologies. And I see Hector and Marcelo are coming in here in a moment, but I just wanted to go back to Marsha, because she's been doing a lot of this work for a long time, and she's doing some very innovative projects right now. And depending on what you can share, Marsha, related to your work and Squamish, et cetera, I just want to welcome you back. We are going to open up the discussion here in a little bit for a questions and more of a roundtable discussion. But I wanted to go back to Marsha as one of our keynotes to share a little more of her work and her success.
I'm working in an area where first in line land claims have been made, new maps have been drawn, and claims of indigenous claims have been made inside of the perception of the monetary interest, the international banking interest. They've been made and recognized, and they're on the path to what I would call issuing currencies over the value of the claims, which are basically unlimited. They're saying we're reconnecting to Mother Earth, and over that, we're sustaining our lives through the value of the claims that are being made. So many of these claims, and I think it's very important as we're pulling these gatherings together to reconnect. Everything I see is so splintered. I see people over here doing amazing things that support the underneath the other projects that are going on. And it's really great that we're connecting, because coming together with all of our individual mandates, our individual vision, begins to have us all clear those barnacles that I was talking about, even with where they're recognizing the sovereignty. Oh, yes, we're going to recognize the sovereignty, and you'll think that's a big victory. And in fact, we've got the Bureau of Indian Affairs, we've got state authorized corporations, we've got the recognition, we've got the corporations that are going to stay there and seed themselves. And the truth is, they're very good at what's called blown cover as cover. They make us think that we have a great victory. And in fact, we've got Social Security, we've got all these attachments, we've got when the minute we apply for Social Security or public benefits, we say to them, I'm incompetent, please manage my affairs. And incompetent is incapable of making these. And we have no constitutional rights. We have no right to even question the authorities as an incompetent, just like a child. Well, no, I'm going to eat this poison because I want to eat this poison. And the mother says, no, don't eat that poison. We take in the poisons of the system and we don't know how we're doing it. We attach these barnacles and we see the sovereignty. They say, yes, you're sovereign, but we've got these attachments. It's like a spider web cocooned around us, but we can't see it because it's too close. And until we bring our individual sovereignty and clear those barnacles that we've consented to be seen as minors, incompetent, and asked for those benefits and somebody to manage them, we can't see, because some of the web is still over our eyes as they're coming in and saying, oh yeah, you're sovereign, good idea. And still we're what they call incompetent in the premise. We don't know how. The money is the attachment. It's the web. It's the safety net that they bring us, and we consent to, we step in of our own volition. But I'm so encouraged by what we're saying. We haven't traded our skills for the money. I had a friend one time that had a restaurant, and I came in and had a long face. I said, what's wrong? And he said, well, I need money. And I said, you need money? What do you need money for? I need tablecloths. I need new menus. I need this. I need that. I said, well, then let's print menus. I've got a printer. I've got boxes of fabric at my house. Let's make tablecloths. I've got sewing machines, and we can dress this place up. Now, what do you need money for? We've been taught that money has to come into everything we do, and that isn't our skill. Our skill in our heart is much bigger than the money, but we take the money because it seems convenient.
Sister, may I ask, this is one of the tough questions we have to address here in this unification process. So I've been up in this area here where I'm at for, probably at least 45 years. And in that process, I've been, ceremonially and formally adopted into the Chief Dan George Foundation, Chief Dan George family. And I know all the relatives from Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, all the elders, incredible people. And then, so they have their councils elected and their elders, and they have their smokehouse dances going on all winter long. So I've been participated in those. So here we have really, and powerful people getting more powerful. Probably becoming the most powerful forces here in Vancouver. You have a very young council over in Squamish. A whole different young people are coming in. It's quite a struggle going on there. So how do we bring together the relatives who feel like somehow their sovereignty has been usurped by the councils of these various First Nations I'm talking about. And while they, really, these are really extended families and so forth and so on. And, they have their issues. How do we, for instance, bring this movement that you're part of Squamish and the other relatives of Squamish? How does that happen?
That's a very, very good question. May I ask you, did you know Jon Cippola?
Yes, I know, and I was just with his wife. I knew him, and I knew the elders of his generation. When I was just, I first went to the smokehouse when I was 1975. And I stood up in the Shaker Church there, the traditional Shaker Church, in 1978 with my dear brother Robert Nahaney and all those other relatives. So I know the relatives very well there in these areas. So that's the issue. So on one hand, I know these are my relatives. Literally, spiritually my relatives. So I understand where different people are coming from, but how do we do this? How do we come to balance? How do we come to harmony instead of battling?
We have to know the war powers. I remember during the 60s and early 70s, I'm dancing around singing, I ain't gonna study war no more. I'm going to study war. And I'll tell you what, until I studied war powers, I didn't know the adversary. I didn't know the attachments I was taking. I didn't know what it is, how I personally, yes, these councils are coming together, but if they have their own personal attachment, their band of Social Security, of all those
But you know,
conveniences, they can't come together as a council
sister,
of minors.
right, sister, one question though. These are
Yes,
incredible, these are beloved human beings. These
I
are
understand.
beloved human beings. And so do you know them? Have you met with
Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make any law impairing the obligations of contracts. If they've contracted with war powers, the war powers contract will prevail.
what I'm saying? How do you take these are thousands of people. How do you take and bring this understanding to what you're saying right here? How do you bring that out so that the whole Squamish Nations gets a chance?
Well,
I mean, I don't know, are you a member of the Squamish Nation? Or I know the hereditary chief was part of that. He did his best. So how do we do this? How and maybe Jon can...
I have a path that's called Wisdom's Calling, the Blessings of Liberty, where we look at the path that War Powers has laid on us, and we find those treaties through the War Powers that promise us the protection of War Powers instead of the defects of War Powers, where we're actually protected and seen at the Law of Nations. And behind that are the 6 indigenous treaties, the dormant treaties, the Seal of Solomon, the Treaty of the Wand, the Staff, the Noah's Ark Treaty, the Peace Pipe Treaty, the Wampum Belt Treaty. Those treaties are there and they're dormant. When we go back and train, those treaties built the Law of Nations, and the biggest and the greatest injustice against the Law of Nations is a breach of peace. The greatest injustice against any of our indigenous tribal sovereignty is what's called a breach of domestic tranquility. And we are inside of those breaches, but when we have these contracts that bind us to be seen as incompetent and a minor and incapable of making these treaties and being enforced by those protections of war powers, we have to stop claiming our rights, because rights now is entanglement. We have to stop claiming those rights and claim the protections.
So Jon, are you there? Thank you, Marsha.
I am, excuse me,
Thank you.
working out and listening here at the same time. First of all, I don't know if Chief Phil, if you comprehend what Marsha's saying when she's talking about the change of status and the minority and the incompetent and all that. But what she's talking about is basically a status correction. First, a mindset. Mindset, I believe, is what she's talking about. But if I understood your question, Chief, it's how do we reconcile these status nations and banded nations with our sovereign hereditary nations? And I would say, I thought that was what I heard. So I would say that's already happening, Chief. It's happening because even the banded nations have now realized that they've given up their birthright for crumbs. And that you can tell just by even the banded nations now have major lawsuits with the Crown in Canada and in America, multi-billion-dollar lawsuits. And that's because they realized, first of all, if the treaty was consummated at all, it was done through fraud, number one. Number two, if it was consummated and wasn't done through fraud, it was breached and was never intended to be carried out. I mean, in other words, there was no intent at the beginning to carry the treaty out. And so you have all these layers of fraud that are built into this. And number three, was it even a nation that did this? Or was it the corporation that created a banded nation, right? Which is what they're doing to make it look like a nation. And it's not even a nation. It's a bunch of colonials pretending to be a nation. And so you have multiple facets going on here. But I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is, even the banded nations are realizing they've sold out for crumbs. And when they realize they've contracted, like she's talking, like Marsha's talking about, contracted through the birth certificate and the social security number and the marriage license and the blah, blah, blah. They're just we're gonna negate all that. It's real easy. In my opinion, it's easy. You can negate it by failure to fully inform and disclose. There's no contract. It vitiates everything from the beginning, provided we declare it. And so we need to wake them up that they've given up their birthright, make them aware, and they simply can declare that I'm not a part of these contracts anymore. I'm canceling all these contracts. I entered into them unbeknownstly, right? Without full disclosure, without my consent, and I'm canceling them. I voluntarily entered into them, and now I'm voluntarily exiting them. Thank you. Have a good day. And I think it's that easy.
And go ahead, Phil.
This is really because we're right now getting ready to have a huge event with all the Okanagan First Nations, Shuswap First Nations at Kelowna. It's going to be the first town in this city. This is the end of May, to be the first one to adopt our sacred covenant, restore Mother Earth. I mean, unite humanity to restore Mother Earth. Now, I believe, if I've seen it, it seemed like that Chief Clarence Louis is part of your nations. Is that from Osuyas First Nation?
Chief Clarence Louis. Yes, I believe you're right. I believe you're correct.
Well, they're one of the most powerful First Nations here in British Columbia, and it looks like I've seen a number of our First Nation from British Columbia part of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. I'm not so you must have in your circle coming together of what you're calling banded and unbanded nations, right? I mean,
no, our 62 nations are predominant, like almost exclusively all sovereign indigenous nations. There may be one banded nation in there somewhere, but no, it's the sovereign indigenous nations. Yeah, that's what's separating. That's why I started out the call with, not confusing us with the corporate nations, status nations, because there's a big lawsuit going on with the Amaqua, who have been considered extinct. They're not extinct. They've been considered extinct because the Corporation of Ontario put together the Algonquin Band, and now the Algonquin Band is claiming all these lands and resources that are in Amaqua territory, and this is how they operate. It's really the corporate provinces or corporate Canada in disguise most of the time, and we can't be duped by this.
If I may just say a couple things here, John, I'm not just talking about a status correction. I see status changes like being on the Titanic and rearranging the deck chairs. You're still on the Titanic. You're going from one, I'm on one chair or I'm on the other chair. And it's much deeper than that. It's not just in 35 years, I have people saying, you're not the boss of me, has not worked. It didn't work when I was a child in my family. I have 5 sisters and 4 brothers. And when I was left as a babysitter, my siblings would say, you're not the boss of me. Well, I still was the babysitter. And so what's superimposed upon us is a trust that becomes the babysitter, and just by saying you're not the boss of me doesn't make it change. And lawsuits, when we're bringing lawsuits, we're stepping into an adversarial proceeding. Have you ever read I can't even say it now, the Trading with the Enemy Act? If we're considered an enemy and a lawsuit is an adversarial proceeding, 2 enemies are coming in for the court the place of last resort for people who are in dishonor and can't settle their own affairs. That's why we go to court. That's the last resort for court. And it is not. Those babysitters are set up because we can't handle our own affairs. We are incompetent in the premise we can claim our sovereignty, but can we act it?
Well, and that's a good point. And again, I'm here as a bridge builder. I can't really comment specifically about Indigenous land sovereignty and stewardship. I can talk about, and I work with Marsha a lot and many others about individual sovereignty, and that can express itself through many ways. And again, we've been talking about, again, during the pandemic, private memberships, land patents. There's a lot of methodologies. In Nevada County, we actually started the Nevada County Constitutional Assembly, which became almost 400 members strong. The issue is people want to debate such smaller topics like, well, I'm going to walk into a store and I'm not going to wear a mask. And if they don't like it, I'm going to literally sit there and fight the owner of the store because I have a right for my individual and my physical sovereignty. But what I do want to say is, and I want to acknowledge that another one of our Wisdom Keeper elders has come in. I want to acknowledge Marcelo coming in. I believe he's in Bolivia right now. But what I do want to talk about is, and we have also Professor Alan Tratner there. And I know Hector is finally able to come in because he's doing a lot of work around Indigenous rights and sovereignty about medicines and feathers and ceremonial things. So there's a lot of facets to this. And again, this is just an initial connection. And I'm glad and honored to be able to facilitate this communication and also to connect the people that are helping us to unravel and figure out how do we move forward to have the type of world we want. But I wanted to introduce a couple of people, and then we still have a little bit of time. I know people have to go, but I wanted to, out of respect, just have Professor Alan Tratner introduce himself. And then I wanted to invite Marcelo to share some words because, again, I know in South America, there's also a lot of challenges around even practicing various traditional and spiritual practices. So Professor Tratner, are you there? Your mic might be off, Alan. And I just wanted to say, Professor Tratner has worked with hundreds and hundreds of sustainable centric and green nonprofits and has worked with technologies. Because for me, my ability to be sovereign by working in harmony with the land, to be able to be self-sustainable, to be able to grow more food, have access to clean water. For me, out here in the Rocky Mountains, I left California and I left all these projects to be able to be a little more sovereign in the way that I can sustain myself and be maybe less dependent on the fiat dollars and the system and all these other things. So are you there, Alan? And if not, we'll go to Marcelo. Your mic might be off, Alan. I do see you there. I also know that Hawaii is having some big rains. So let's do this out of respect and his time and bandwidth. I want to invite our brother Marcelo into the conversation today. Again, Indigenous land sovereignty and sustainable regenerative stewardship. So welcome, Marcelo.
Hello to everybody. Nice to hear you again, and all of you. I'm talking with at the south of this continent, Bolivia, the highlands of the Himalaya. We are 8,000 feet high in the beautiful mountains near the Lake Titicaca. So we are part of the Aymara Nation, Quechua Nation, Guarani Nation, and other 36 nations in Bolivia. I think then 60 half of the population in Bolivia is still being indigenous people, and we are still been working in our ancestral field, and the base of our work was maybe these two last generations. We are working in the political field as to contribute to be what we are now. We are now a plurinational state in Bolivia, accepted the 36 nations, and be part of the constitution is the most important meaning is the living well. I would say the living well is the summa camaña, no? Is the like the way to look for the happiness, no? The brotherhood happiness and the circle happiness. So on these several years, I'm working in that field of learning our ancestral knowledge and be part of a very interesting group of elders in Bolivia. And we have a confederation of traditional healers, traditional medicine men, and our constitution accept our condition of traditional medicine doctors as being a base minister of traditional medicine in my country. I'm still working in that field, and we're working to the acceptation of the traditional medicine and the traditional knowledge, also the sacred plants like the yagé, the ayahuasca, the huachuma, and other sacred plants be accepted to be our practice, no? Our medicine to be free of being in streets and to work with the medicine to heal the people. So the fight never ends. We also have academic degree. I also studied the Occidental University. So I study in the old way of our ancestral knowledge and the Occidental way in the university. So, in this moment, we, the original people, the native people, we must to work in the two fields, in our ancestral knowledge and the Occidental knowledge. And we must to be prepared for that two fields and to work in we have two hands and two sides of the brain, so we can do two things at the same time. So I think in Aymara and speak in English, so we can do many things with wise and with the heart. So I don't believe there is impossible things when we are united. I think then everybody here in this circle have his own kind of spiritually touch and knowledge, and we go together in one project. We can make it. We can go on and have success and to find the way that we want it. No? So on all of these years, we have a very hard times in each country have the same story of the destruction of our lands, the killing of thousands of our relatives, the violation of our rights, the violations of our women, the killing of our childs, the poverty, the misery, and the sickness. So the story all around this say colonialist concept of hegemony is the same all around the world. It's still being in North America and Canada. No matter where we look at the same colonialist is colonialist. Europe now is a new colonialist confrontation inside and all around the world. So you must know then we have a beautiful thing in our body and our souls. Then one moment will come, then the eagle and the condor will get together again in the same place, in the same time. And that moment will arrive a new time, a new Pachacuti, a shift of the time. So I believe that moment is coming very soon. And that's why I quit my job in the government in Bolivia 2 years ago. And I traveled to Mexico to visit and to find my brother Phil. And I meet him and I touch him and I talk with him. And I believe what he believed. And now we are working together in this new moment, the arrival and the conclusion of the prophecy. So I invite you, all of you, all around the world, people. Michael, you meet me in Palenque this year. To be Gail and all of you, Yalenka, all of you, John, to be part of this process and to feel what is going on. We believe in the signals in the sky. We believe in the signals of the earth is shaking, the Mother Earth is shaking. And we believe in many strong changes coming. And the power drums are giving the noise. And we must dance the power. We must dance I would say the Takion Koi. Say Takion Koi. It was the dance from the rebels in the first years of the colonialist time in Peru. The elders left the arms there, left the fight, and go to the mountains, and they start dancing days and days and days and days. And they say the new war is not fight with guns. The new war is fight with conscience, and to dance until the new sun dance come on. The new sun is coming, and the new rainbow will be in the sky. So that's my talk, brother. Thank you. Thank you to invite me in this moment. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Marcelo. I do want to say we have a little bit more time, but we also want to respect how busy everyone is with all of your projects and the things that you're doing. So we're going to start working towards the end. And again, today was just to open up this communication. And I also want to make sure that we do things in the proper way and with protocol, and we have an appropriate ending. And again, I want to thank, for those who came in earlier, I want to thank Grandmother Gail Thomas and also Chief Phil Lane for doing an opening for us. We always put the voices of our traditional people, our wisdom keepers, at the forefront, and we honor and respect their time and advisorship. So I wanted to just go for a moment, because we have many relatives coming from many different traditions and cultures and locations around the world. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge. I know that I see our sister Kamiko is here, and if she could just share for a quick moment. And also we want to honor, I know it's probably late there in Europe, I want to just invite just for a moment that we can have our Jaguar Award recipient for her support for Eagle and Condor Council, Alenka. But let's go to Kamiko and welcome.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for your time and presence and for organizing this. And at this crucial moment, this topic, I feel, is really taking movement across the planet. And I'm currently here in Ecuador in the Amazon rainforest, living with the Ciclopai tribe, which is a people of less than 2,000 that are both here in Ecuador and Peru. And Ciclopai means multicolored and Pai means people. So their name translates into the multicolored people. And they're well known for their vast knowledge of plant medicines. They have an encyclopedia of over 2,000 plants that they use for healing. Many things from the Western perspective that have been diagnosed as uncurable. So they have quite a vast knowledge of wisdom. And actually, back in the 60s, there was a war between Peru and Ecuador. It was a border dispute. And so during that time, right where their land of origin is, where they say they actually lived underground like the Hopi during the Third World, so they've probably been there for thousands of years. They actually left from being underground when the water levels were up on Earth. And then there was a sacred deer that came and told them it was time, to come out of the earth onto the land. And so it showed them this land called Pucallá, which is where there was a war between Peru and Ecuador. And so they were forcefully displaced to, move to Ecuador and the other half to Peru. So they got divided, their tribe, into two places for a political border, right, by the government. And where they are now is about 8-hour canoe ride from this place. And so, for about over 80 years, they've been in this legal battle to get their land back, talking about, land stewardship and this topic of, indigenous land back. They've been this example of, never giving up to return to their land. And many of the plants, 7 of which they healed or treated themselves of COVID, are found in this place called Pucallá. And we did a short video for the New Yorker about it. And basically, they had to row 8 hours to search for these plants during COVID, in which they used this place as a refugee. And it also is the place where they drink their sacred medicine, Yahe, where they would invite all the other surrounding tribes of different nationalities and different languages to participate in Yahe ceremonies. So they were very peaceful people, and they taught their neighbors like the Kofan and the Siona about these, different plants. And so since since they've been displaced from their land, they've been in this legal battle. And, great news, actually last year on November 29th, 2023, they got the land title to their land. They won this victory that they were actually able to bring the judges to their territory to do the court case, and they won. And so it's basically this unprecedented historic victory for Indigenous people for land back. And, it's like the first of many battles won, and there's many more to come, but it shows that actually, reclaiming this land is a movement. And I know Lexi Phil shared in the chat earlier, the Haida Nation also, getting recognized for their land. So I feel like this is a movement that's beginning to, take place. And so we're finishing up a documentary film called The Roots Awaken, which highlights this, Sicopai victory of getting their land back. But, it's every day, it's sort of a battle in a sense for peace. And we're actually in a Yahe ceremony just 2 days ago, and there was a vision that was kind of confusing. And then the next day we got news, basically there had been 2 canoes that went back to this land. They're supposed to, officially give them the title, but they still haven't gotten it, so we're waiting. So a couple of canoes went to basically go to this land and start making preparations. And there's a tribe that recently immigrated there from the south of Ecuador, the Quichua people. They've only been there maybe 25 years, and they're on the outskirts. And they didn't actually lose any land when the Siacopai won, but they would go sort of illegally fishing there. It's a huge reserve of black lakes, so many mystical creatures and fish. And so they would go, fishing there, and they felt threatened when the Siacopai won. So we got this news after the ceremony that basically this Quichua canoe shot down the Siacopai security that had been in the land, and they shot their motor, and then they took all the cell phones from all of the guard, La Guardia, and they threw it in a river and then confiscated everything. So it's been interesting couple of days, because now the military's out there, we've made complaints, the government's involved, and they were kind of I guess it was sort of this, they didn't want to accept that the Siacopai won, where they could have essentially been friends, and I'm sure the Sikopai would have let them, fish, or they could have made friendship. But even though they won that land title, there's still this happening. So, in one sense, it's this huge victory, but in another way, it still shows, that the battle is within each human being. And, we're all brothers and sisters, right, of this human family. Even indigenous peoples, fighting amongst each other, what's happening in the Middle East, etc. Is like really the way to move forward in this Pachacuti, or this new cycle, is this awakening that within each person we have this infinite potential and energy and courage, wisdom, compassion. And that awakening within the human being is what's going to allow this shift into higher consciousness and peace. And so when talking about land back and when talking about Indigenous stewardship, essentially we're also talking about this awakening that's happening in our human family, to remember that we're all children of Mother Earth, and that land is life. So without territory for Indigenous people, there is no life. There's no meaning to be in an apartment in the city if they don't have the land where their ancestors died, where their ceramics of their grandmothers are, where their plants are that they've used for thousands of years, and the birds and the animals, and all their life is connected to the territory, right? So the moment that we lose that, in a sense, we are on this search, for that reconnection with nature. And I think many people are in that. And so that's why it's so important, Indigenous stewardship and land back, because they're showing us what our whole human family essentially is looking for, which is that connection with our land. And what we're all trying to do is, it's not just, Indigenous people, but it's all of the human beings returning to our territories and becoming stewards of our local land and having that connection with the infinite network of life, right? So I don't want to talk too long.
Right.
I already talked too much. So I just wanted to share that. And if anyone's interested, the Sikopai story, it's ongoing. I know there was like this recent situation that happened, but we're hoping that it will actually allow them to get their land title back faster, because those people had made a complaint. They were trying to prevent the Sikopai from getting their title. So we think that this act of violence, even though it seems like a bad thing, it could actually help propel them to get their recognition officially on paper sooner, showing that there's that threat. So we're just going to keep the light and the faith that everything's going to break through in the next couple weeks. So if anyone's interested, you can always, be in touch with Michael or myself, and we'll be happy to share the Sikopai. And I'll send a link in the chat if anyone's interested to know more. So thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. And we're getting towards the end of the call, but you're talking about how land stewardship, and also about the ability to have these relationships with the natural world. And in some places, I can only speak primarily to places I've been here in North America, places in the Amazon, places I've seen in Mexico, even in Costa Rica, with the introduction of palm oil farming and non-traditional, non-indigenous based, non-native agriculture. There's a lot of decimation that's being done, even with good intention. So I wanted to, and just to honor her for a quick moment, I want to go over to Professor Alan Tratner, but I just want to acknowledge our relatives from Europe, and I know she's done a lot of support for many of you on the call. I just wanted Alenka to say hello for a minute and acknowledge her, and then we're going to have Professor Alan Tratner talk about his 50 some odd years working with sustainability and supporting a lot of people around the world. So are you there, Alenka?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. It's very nice to see you all, and thank you for welcoming you. I'm presenting Europe, Slovenia, the country that seems like that has everything like settled with that we are kind of sovereign and everything. But in honest, when I was listening all this and through my artworks, I'm kind of pointing out, but like we are kind of totally brainwashed to think that we are sovereign. We just maybe this point about the land, it's like our forests are owned mostly by Vatican, by the church. And we are so proud to say that we have 65% of forest, but that's kind of changed like last 4 years. During the COVID, there was a change in the law of how to manage them, and they are really cutting it down very fast in a very BS way. And this is really concerning. When I was listening all of you, I just had really this kind of a clarity about how deeply people are brainwashed, that we have a kind of stewardship and this. And I noticed how also things in Europe or wherever they're building in the nature and beautiful places, that they are making these paths in the nature that you can only walk on that path, that they are brick, and you look the nature, you can't anymore go off the road. So everything is just being controlled, even walking in the forest or walking on the coast. I know you are rushed, so I could talk a lot about this. Right. And thank you so much. We've been deeply brainwashed, people here. If you say anything about what we just mentioned, they say you are conspiracy theorist or conspiracy. Whatever you mention in this way, you are labeled in that way. So that's why I use art to talk in this way.
Great. Thank you. It's great to see you. And I do want to say we're going to have Professor Alan Tratner. And again,
thank you.
He's doing amazing work in Maui, working in collaboration with the indigenous communities. He's working with Leiven Hwang, who was on the call earlier, from Indigenous Bridges. But I want to bring this up because even though we're still demystifying and finding the pathway so we can all truly get to our individual sovereignty, our spiritual sovereignty, we can have our physical sovereignty, we can have land sovereignty, and we can help to bring these sacred hoops together and to rebuild in the powerful way. And a lot of that has to do with coming to reality with the pain of reconciliation for a lot of the horror that's been put on each other from maybe ourselves and many of our ancestors. But I want to introduce Professor Tratner because I know he's on a phone, the computer wasn't working, but I want to bring him on to talk a little bit. And as he talks, I'm going to just share a little bit of some of the projects we're doing. And also we're going to hear from our brother Jerry Anderson, who's also was at Standing Rock, a water protector, because he's actually doing a project in Puerto Rico with the indigenous community on 10,000 acres of pristine jungle there. So again, I want to be optimistic because part of this conversation today was about regenerative stewardship. Again, working in partnership and collaboration with indigenous communities, our wisdom keepers, and this traditional ecological and traditional knowledge. But also there are a lot of people who, indigenous, some people I work with, if you're from the earth, you're indigenous. We also have our ancestral indigenous nature of where our ancestors have come from. And there's a lot of even divisiveness about verbiage, but there's a lot of people who are emissaries who are stepping up to do conservation work and sustainability work. So with that, I want to introduce Professor Alan Tratner, who's currently doing a sustainability center in Maui. So welcome, Alan.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Sorry, this whole mess with the computers and Zoom, but I just can't tell you. First of all, aloha to everyone. And I'm so moved about today's discussion and the presentations. It just, in my heart, my mind, my soul, I'm just here, have been here since helping found Earth Day. And I think my best contribution, it's kind of humble. I think that part of sovereignty and the whole concept of being in self-control has to do with self-sufficiency. And are all you Native and Indigenous people know that from the beginning of time, is being in one and in harmony with the environment that's around you. And we've lost that in part of what we've been doing for 54 years since Earth Day and continuing on in our organization, Green to Gold, and working with Michael and Earthstock, et cetera, is that I want to bring a small part of this that can be very large for you, and that is independent operations in whatever situation you are. that are in harmony with the planet and help us fight climate change and the disasters and make a big difference on that natural harmony. And that is using the blessed opportunity that we have on planet Earth of the fusion reactor 93 million miles away, solar energy and geothermal energy and renewable power of every type and kind you can imagine that we can tap into, that gets us away from mining and from exploiting the planet for oil, fossil energies and everything, and really give us a green, completely inclusive economy. And I want to do that in communities, and I want to do that with local organizations and let you be empowered to tap into that. And that's what I've become expert in. I'm a professor of environment and energy, but more important, our incubator since Earth Day globally is all about these incredible geniuses around the planet that care about the planet, care about humanity, are socially and environmentally responsible, and are trying to invent a better future that is green and self-sufficient and independent and in total harmony with our fellow human beings and all the millions of species that we live on the spaceship Earth. And I want to help that because we have technology, methodologies, and approaches that are in collaboration with the wisdom that comes from Native and Indigenous populations. And the understanding of getting back to the land means also being that steward of the land again and being control of that, and then being independent and self-sufficient in food and energy and cleansing your water and using it and learning how to build completely independent homes that give you the comfort and the things that you need to prosper and thrive in a compatible way with the human population, civilization, and the environment. And that's what I'm all about. That's my role. I can't stop war right now, and I can't stop all the injustices that are happening. But I think what we can bring to, and we're trying to do for the islands, not only here in Maui and beyond, but in the Pacific Islands and everywhere else, was we're trying to bring, that's why we called it Build Back Green, that we did with Michael right after Maui. And that's taken a life of its own, that we can show people how to recover from disasters and then build back into a sustainable way that makes them independent, makes them powerful in many ways so that they can stand on their own 2 feet as miniature countries, nations, tribes, whatever it is, and not have to buy from other sources and corporations that are raping the planet, and be in touch with nature and let nature be in touch with you, empower you up, and give you all these resources in a way that is comparable and compatible to just being self-sufficient and independent in harmony. So that's my best thing I can do to help all of you in that element of your sovereignty, your stewardship, and make you that independent and have wealth building and economic, sustainable economic development that helps you bring jobs and your own self-sufficiency in your communities and in life. So I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, and Alan, just for a minute, I'm showing the website, and again, if people are interested, they can go to regenerationglobal.net. But Alan and I and dozens of others have partnered to do this. It's an umbrella. There's not one person. There's no guru. There's no president. There's no pharaoh. There's no one person. But we started this umbrella called Regeneration Global, which is a collaborative initiative of many organizations, some who are on the call today, about how do we regenerate. And we're talking full spectrum regeneration, spiritual regeneration, economic regeneration, environmental regeneration. We're talking about things like independent media and health. So this is really a full spectrum platform. And then I just want, since you're on the phone, Alan, I want to show one of the initiatives that Alan, myself, Leiven from Indigenous Bridges, who was on the phone earlier, we did Build Back Green Global, because after the Alan is in Maui, he was creating a transition to a sustainability project, and he can go anywhere in the world and help retrofit for more conscious systems around water usage and renewable green energy. But after the fire in Maui, which Alan actually survived, he was in Lahaina, we created this Build Back Green kind of green emergency sustainable regenerative project, partnered with Adriana Alvarez, Hector Benton, Nancy Sisqueiros, many of our family that was in Palenque, to do a campaign for Maui. And now we're doing one for Acapulco, because we can no longer count on governments and handouts and, here in the United States, FEMA, to come riding in and to fix all these problems that are happening around climate change and many of these natural and some not natural, not disasters that are happening. So again, I'll put these links into the chat. And really today, if we just are launching this weekend, and again, I'll put all this in the chat, Regenerative Media TV. I just want people to know that it's not just media. We're putting up curriculums and connections of people that are doing this kind of regenerative work. And of course, this whole work around sovereignty, going back to our own spiritual and individual responsibility, like Marsha was talking about, her husband and the pots and blame and like, why aren't they doing it? But stepping in to be our own sovereign solutionary to bring healing and good medicine to the issues of these times. It's a platform. So I don't want to go into that. I'll put the links because I want people to know, especially with Earthstock Summit coming up in August, we have platforms, we have ways to create connectivity. We're not trying to be the network of networks. We're just trying to bring platforms to make our work more successful and reach a lot of the people who we might not necessarily reach in our different communities. And also, I'm really happy to have Felipe here, because we're talking about Alliance for Regenerative Communities and Earthstock collaborating now with Gaia Union in Colombia, and of course, all of you. But I want to introduce another amazing solutionary who's working with the land, an incredibly pristine piece of land. He's working with the indigenous community in Puerto Rico and doing it in a way that's spiritual. So this is a success story. I want to welcome our brother, a water protector. He was in Standing Rock and support. He's done events in South America with the indigenous communities, and now he's launching this new project. And again, if you can stay till the end, I want to just make sure we do our proper protocol with the closing. But I want to welcome Brother Jerry Anderson.
Thank you, Michael. What a joy to share the space with this great group. Yes, to come from the indigenous point of view, the land behind me is the actual land of the Taino culture before Columbus arrived, part of the Arawak Indian tribes. And this is the area where most of their mythologies took place around the Tanama River, which is the one in behind my view here. And it passes 3 times through a mountain. So we're proud to be the custodians of a indigenous, very sacred piece of land in their tribal understanding. And we decided to go ecclesiastical nation because it allowed us to have a different kind of sovereignty of our property with the separation of church and state. This allowed us to be able to allow the indigenous folks to actually use the sacred teacher plants and without any kind of authority over them. So yes, we're a university monastery that is very focused on the law of one and unity. Thank you, Michael.
Great, thank you. And I will say we'll be presenting Jerry's film on Monday for our Earth Day broadcast. I'm going to put a couple things into the chat that we just want to make sure. Again, these are platforms we've put up and for the spirit of collaboration and co-creation. So I know that many of our elders were here on the call and had to leave. They actually extended their time greatly just to continue this discourse. And I will say all of what we did today will be edited due to the hacking that happened earlier. Will be edited and reposted. And not only that, but we have dozens of videos up on Regenerative Media TV on Vimeo and YouTube with a lot of the people who are actually stepping up with their platforms, their technologies, their projects, their active initiatives, and their networks to help work together and collaborate. So there's a lot of great information there. But I wanted to thank, everyone for showing up today. I know Marcelo had to go. I know our brother Hector, between traffic and weather and technology, wasn't able to join us today in Mexico City, who is going to talk a lot about what's happening with Naciones Ancestrales. But again, most of you are on the platform because we are tomorrow. We have the Build Back Green campaign, which we're actually doing again in Maui and Acapulco. And then Monday will be our Earth Day. So if you don't have the information, the links and I know we all love being on Zoom all day, but the next couple of days, 2 days, we're launching Regenerative Media. And honestly, we're weaving more and more solutionaries and projects together. And it's very exciting. And we're building, it's still over 4 months away. We're building towards Earthstock. And I really hope all of you can join us for this 7-day eco-spiritual summit. And every day we have more and more exciting announcements. So I think I want to, as promised, open up if anybody has any last thoughts or questions or input, because this is an inclusive discourse. I know I see Marsha is still here and she's quite prolific with her work. I will also put up the link for her Wisdom's Callings, Blessings of Liberty. We did a 7-week, 45-50-minute video series that goes all through about war powers and the Constitution and personal sovereignty and spiritual sovereignty. I mean, it's not a matter we can just ear tickle and go away. So I will put that all into the chat, but I do want to put the feather into the center for whoever would like to add to the conversation or has any questions. So here's our feather.
Well, I would just say that maybe we need to correct our languaging because we say brainwashing when they really mean brain dirtied.
Yes, that's why I likened it to the barnacles. It just comes and we invite it. And I see actually a path for us to rise our frequency so much that all of that, our speaking, it betrays us all the time. We are taught as mockingbirds to speak a language of commerce. English is the language of commerce. I wish so much that I understood all of your languages, because I understand, I see commerce, I walk through it. We can walk through this commerce and come back to the songs that really come in our language. And the mechanism, the way to do that, there is a path. It is a personal commitment. And one of the things that I see is we say, oh, the land is sovereign, and now they're saying the land is sovereign, but they're still seeing the inhabitants as enemy combatants. How do we get to the point where they no longer see us there? We resonate so highly that we don't precipitate, we don't draw in that vision of enemy combatants. That's the key.
Yes, as Michael was talking about, the water protectors at Standing Rock really got to see how much this enemy combatant was involved with the tribes being peaceful, and here we have military tanks and helicopters and everything against us.
Yeah, we don't understand why we're perceived as the enemy. And we can clear that in our own thinking and rise to a frequency where the war powers now become obligated spiritually and energetically to protect what we're doing.
Yes, I would like to add on to that, because this is a word that I've put in several calls over the past 4 4 months since I joined the first Phil Lane gathering online in December. And I always tell the story that when I arrived to the Sierra Nevada, I met Mama Palia. And he told us that he had gone into a cave for 15 years consulting about the same question that Marsha is putting out about why are we seen as the enemies? Why do we have to fight and go to war? And why does the defense of nature have to do with perpetuating conflict? And so he went into the cave and renounced all of his duties as a mamo. You know, they're the ones in charge of doing all the matrimonies, the baptisms in their communities. And he renounced all of this. And he just decided to stay in the cave until the Mother Earth answered him. And when he got his reply, what he received was this. He called it spiritual disarmament. And he said that we are filled with weapons. And so all of the negative thoughts we've had, all of the negative words we've used, those are all, he said, poison, weapons. He said, we have knives, we have bombs, we have machine guns. And so this is what we've co-created, right? We've co-created this world. And so he had a methodology. He said the Mother Earth was asking for us to spiritually disarm. And that this was a methodology of sitting on certain rocks here in the Sierra. And part of his mission was to travel to different places in the world, which is the mission that we're continuing, to set these spots for this work. And he said that Mother Earth was asking for us all, especially Indigenous leaders who are at the forefront of the defense of nature. He spoke of the transition of a spiritual defense of nature. And that the first step was to recognize, since the moment that we were conceived, all of our gestation, recapitulating and putting into these, into transmuting, each place and each culture must have its own methodology for this, but it was about transmutation and about disarmament. So recapitulating and transmuting all of the negative charge that we've contributed to and that we've also lived, and that this would create a release, and that this is really what's going to elevate our vibration. But he said that until we take responsibility for all of the weapons that we have had, that we can't talk about a spiritual defense of nature. So this he called a spiritual revolution. And he said that one of the first arms we had to disarm was our sexuality, because he said that that is the origin of all life. And that's the way we are conceiving material form, is through how we're handling our sexual energy. So this went very deep, of course, and I hope to have more chance to share more of this wisdom and the things that he taught to us, because I feel that they're very, very relevant. And he gave us a 9-year period of incubating this here so that we could be ready to share this with the world. So I feel like we're carrying a very important message that hits right upon the subject that Marsha just brought up, which is why this is always in conflict, and how can we transition into the peaceful defense of nature. So Aho, I hope to be able to share more with you about this.
Great, thank you. And I know Brother Felipe has had his hand up, and it's almost like we need like a 7-day gathering for us all to get together and to talk more and do ceremony and to reason things through. So we'll put our thinking cap on. But I want to call on our brother Felipe in Colombia from Gaia Union. Welcome.
Thank you. I just have a quick question, and well, basically also an invitation to keep the thread of this conversation, especially on the way that the question is, how are you envisioning to recover land in terms of the, let's say, the legal or the ownership itself? Like, is there a specific answer, or should we just open a thread around that?
I think opening a thread would be great. I know that with Gaia Union, you have different platforms and networks and stuff. So I think it's valuable because what I'm hearing today, and maybe it's only my own perception, is there's different methodologies and techniques. But I think with some of the people who are here today and others who weren't able to make it, we have some great minds and some hearts and some wisdom keepers that can help advice on this. Because even Jon saying, when he did his thing about a land patent and things like that, they recognized, and this is what we're talking about, we're kind of unsubscribing from the system. And as soon as they see people do that, that's when they go on the attack. So yeah, I think if you would we could start a thread. I think that would be a great next step from here. Does that make sense?
Sure. I don't know if Marsha, you want to say something? I am gonna copy.
It's very much, the research is very much unique to the location. Each place where the land is has its own basically knot around the real sovereignty, the real stewardship of the land. So wherever you are, how you have to research how the attachments got there, and they can be unattached.
Okay, perfect. I will share a link of an open group where we're having this kind of threads. For one of this is for this kind of topic of dignity in general. So we can
continue. All right, thank you, brother Felipe. And I will say, Marsha has a 45-minute program, and I have to say, a lot of people don't even know what War Powers is. And when I hear this, because I was there in the class, fighting against things is not a way of peace. Dropping into a state of our own empowered spiritual realization, which is sovereignty, and owning that and claiming that alone, just the spiritual reality of that has its implications and ripples. But instead of fighting against the system, we can unsubscribe and come into accordance with that divine will and sovereignty alignment. And within that, like Professor Tratner was saying, if we have our connection to the land and based on traditional knowledge, and indigenous communities helping to lead the way with these self-sustainable and regenerative methodologies of regenerative agriculture and green energy, we can make accelerated change. And that was really exciting today on our discussion between the different people that are here. We're already talking about over 100 communities that are working towards sovereignty, but also we're bringing in the solutionaries and some of the infrastructure that can support that, if that's the will of those people in that bioregion. Again, we're not here trying to colonize minds and colonize land with our ideas, but we do want people to know that we're here and support. But if you're interested in doing the class, it's on YouTube. I can share that link. Just go to RMTV. And I just wanted to say that this weekend is a big launch for Regenerative Media TV. I put the link for the website in there. This video will be up in the next day or two. There's already dozens of videos of other solutionaries and projects and initiatives. Jerry's video, his interviews there, and again, many others. We're finding our job right now is just to help build bridges. We're not trying to be the network of networks and track everything. We're just trying to create connectivity with people who have solutions. So again, I want to put the feather into the center for any last minute thoughts that people would like to share before we conclude. And I see that, again, I want to thank Grandmother Gail Thomas at this point, because she is part of our weekly Wisdom Keepers group. and I rely heavily upon her spiritual advisorship and traditional knowledge so that we can do things in a respectful and a good way. So if here in a few minutes she would do the closing for us, I think it's only apropos because we're also in the time of through our understanding, through our reconciliation, and through this regenerative process of giving the respect back to our indigenous communities, back to our wisdom keepers, and specifically back to women and to the feminine, which we all contain within us, but back to the women and especially back to the grandmothers. And I had, Marsha had asked, I'm not sure if that happened, about possibly connecting at some point in support of grandmothers and possibly in support of the work that Gail's doing. So if Gail would honor us by staying a few more minutes, and again, thank you for your patience. I do want to make sure everyone had their voice and thoughts heard. So again, feather back to the center of our council.
Yeah, Michael, I'm in total agreement with about how we don't fight for peace, but instead we peace for peace. And this earlier with this hack that we had experienced, despite the absolutely reprehensible behavior by those hackers, I think what it validated for me was that we are all in a space that is moving forward with truth and meaningfulness as to what we're all doing and the work that we're all giving ourselves into. And I believe Brother Jon had mentioned his financial assets being threatened and possibly even seized, being subjugated to something like that. Is also another way that he put it as like a validation that, yeah, the sort of work that he's doing is also a validation, confirmation that he's moving forward, and it's being seen as this paradigm shift that's occurring. And of course, we're going to be met with some sort of a resistance and retaliation, but we don't fight against that through hooking ourselves into that game of fighting against with fight and for fighting for peace, but instead of we peace with peace, and we decide to not play that game, and we just simply say no, we don't participate, and say we're not having it. So I just want to commend every single one of you all for doing all of the work. It's certainly an inspiration for me, and I think it's what today has taught us, certainly has taught me, and especially with this hack that went on, was just that, well, every single one of us are holding immense power in this building this new world that we want to inhabit and live in for ourselves and for posterity. And again, thank you again for doing every single one of you for doing all the work that's needed. And it's just, I want to give my homage to that. So thank you all.
If I may just make a comment, the working title that in my research for the video that Michael just referenced, Blessings of Liberty, Wisdom's Calling, the Blessings of Liberty. My working title was Living Without Fighting.
Again, it's a great honor just to create these opportunities, and really looking forward to the deep drop in with all of you, with spirituality being at the core of it, but how we can deeply explore it. A lot of these truths. And I am finding even right now with some of these platforms and the hacking and just so many things, like the best thing we can do is gather in person and have these councils and conversations and ceremonies. So again, I hope to see all of you August 19th through 25th. I will say we had a very productive call with Luciana, and was on the call the other night with Chief Phil and Marcelo and others about the importance of Eagle and Condor and the Eighth Fire being part of Earthstock in August. So all of this is getting clearer and being worked out. But I just wanted to just again make sure.
I may interrupt. Gail is singing and she's muted, and I think that she's honoring your request for her to sing.
Oh, okay.
No?
Thank you.
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I interrupted.
She's always drumming. That's one of the things of her holding the sacred space for all of these antics. And before we do our closing, so it seems like everyone is complete, correct? And I just also want to share the amazing work that Gail's doing through drumming and music and movement and working with the elementals and all that she brings and makes accessible to us based on her traditional work and her lineage. So it's always a great honor. So with that, I will pass it to Grandmother Gail Thomas.
Translation from Lakota is sending our voice to ancestors with the common people's pipe. With compassion of grandmothers, we want to live. Drum of sacred elk nation, pipe of black-tailed deer, sending our voice on this good day with the common people's pipe. And thank you all. Muerto Pilamia. That's right, Michael. From 11:30 to 1, join us. Bring in your fires, your ashes to connect with Chief Phil's work to the Global Fire Room on Sign Network. Thank you.
Thank you, one and all. We'll be all having our sacred fires tomorrow, and we can't light one, we carry it in our hearts. And I just want to thank everyone for showing up today.